Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Coming up next, we're going to talk about our favorite table service restaurants at the DVC resorts on this week's episode of the DVC Show. Welcome, folks. Coming to you from the Bob Varley Studio in Orlando, Florida. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined this week via Skype by my good friends, Mr. Jerry Saito.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Paul Krieger.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, not switching over for that, is it? This is the fun of working with Skype. And, of course, our producer, Mr. Corey Fiasconaro.
Welcome home.
And hope you guys are doing well. Before we get started, the usual reminders. If you are interested in buying a DVC contract, if you are interested in selling your DVC contract, if you enjoy the content that we produce, both here on YouTube, on our DVCfan.com blog, on the DIS, on disboards.com, on Facebook with our DVC Fan Facebook group, show your support by supporting our sponsors, dvcstore.com. 1-800-550-6493. That's Jerry's personal cell phone number, by the way. So I really encourage you to call it like around 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And tell him you want to buy a 1,000-point Grand Californian contract. Just do that.
I'll take that call.
Yeah, he'll take that call at 2 anytime, day or night. But 1-800-550-6493 or dvcstore.com. All right, so this week we wanted to talk about our favorite table service restaurants at various DVC resorts. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to do something, I'm going to throw a little curveball. Because when I really stop and think about it, if I'm going to think about the best restaurant, table service restaurant, at any of the DVC resorts that I've been to, I have to, we never talk about this. I just forget about it. Napa Rose at the Grand Californian absolutely wins. Absolutely wins. And that, we never talk about the Grand Californian.
Right.
And I've been to, I've never seen the inside of a room of a DVC room at the Grand Californian. I've stayed at the resort many, many times. But I've eaten at Napa Rose. Every time I'm out there, I have to eat at Napa Rose.
That made me just think of something. So I've never actually eaten at Napa Rose. We had a reservation for it one time, but I remember we had trouble adding additional guests. So we just ended up going back for a second time that trip to Steakhouse 55. And
technically not a DVC.
Yes, but pretty soon we would be having this conversation with Steakhouse 55 in the mix. And if that would be the case, I need to go on the record saying Steakhouse 55 is probably the best meal I've ever had.
Steakhouse 55 is amazing. Napa Rose is just on a whole nother level.
Is it?
Okay. It's a whole nother level, Napa Rose. And, even in comparison to, our top tier restaurants out here, I will add California Grill at the Contemporary, certainly amazing. Doesn't compare to Napa Rose, though.
Right.
Citrico's over at the Grand Floridian. I think Topolino's has to be on my list over at Riviera. Flying Fish, of course. The Wave, of course. You've heard me talk about those. So those are givens. But really, other than my staples, California Grill, Topolino, Citrico's, and Napa Rose are, for me, top tier. Now, when they open the Disneyland Tower, the DVC Disneyland Tower, then we can add Steakhouse 55 into that discussion. I agree with you. It's an amazing restaurant. Jerry, what about you?
I think the California Grill is probably the top restaurant, in my opinion, for the Disney resort, if we're doing dining. But I will say Victoria and Albert's was not mentioned yet. Victoria and Albert's is very special. It's an excellent top-of-the-line restaurant. extremely expensive, but it's an experience. So I definitely would put Victoria and Albert's in the top 5 for sure, if not number 1. But it is somewhat unique in just its style. It's not a casual type dining. It's even a step above, fine dining. So anyway,
it is. Let me just say though, the expense is not the reason I don't go to Victoria and Albert's. It's the fact I got to put on a jacket and a tie.
And Jerry stole my thunder a little bit with that one. I was basically going to say Victoria and Albert's, and I was going to say I'll slap a tuxedo T-shirt on you, Pete, and we're going to go next time.
I just, the idea. Someone's got to be married or dead for me to put a suit on, and I just don't like them. I never liked them. I don't like having anything up around my neck. I don't, I just don't. So, that's the reason. I mean, maybe one day I'll break down and do it, but I'm sorry, Jerry, let me let you go ahead and finish.
Yeah. So it did. I mean, Victoria and Albert's definitely left an impression that I still talk about. And that was, 10 years ago that I went there. So it's great. But for like birthdays, anniversaries, a really nice dinner out, want to take some friends and visiting. I mean, California Grill for me is the go-to. Sanaa is fantastic. I love Sanaa over at Animal Kingdom. This might not be a popular choice, but I love the atmosphere at the Polynesian. So I like either Kona or the Ohana's. I know Ohana's food might not be the greatest, but it's the ambiance and just the whole vibe of that restaurant that I do enjoy. Flying Fish and the Wave. Those maybe a little bit more than 5, but those would be my ultimate go-tos anytime I want out to dinner for a nice dinner at Disney.
See, my problem with Ohana isn't the food. I think a lot of times I've had some great meals there. My problem with Ohana is the service and how quickly they will rush you through a meal. That is my issue.
Well, I agree with that. I do think that at the end of the meal, when they think you've eaten too much, they kind of stop serving you. They almost like try to push you out. I don't, but I'm like, hey, I'm not quite done yet. Can you please bring me some more shrimp? So, I definitely can sense that same, when they want you out, they kind of push you out.
Yeah, exactly. Paul, what about you?
I feel like Jerry and I should start going to dinner together because our list is pretty spot on. I had Victoria and Albert's sort of at the top of mine, and the main reason is that it's more than just a dinner. It is a full experience. I mean, you're going to learn so much through that meal. Elizabeth, the harp player there, I could just sit and listen to her play for hours, various Disney tunes and current hits and things like that. So I absolutely loved our meal there last year. Topolino's, Amy and I just had an opportunity to check out Topolino's. It is getting close to surpassing California Grill, and I only say that based off the experience that we had at California Grill this past trip as well. But I felt like the service at Topolino's was amazing. And even though their menu currently, being that we're in the pandemic and things are cut back some, even though they have a limited menu, they are doing everything so well on that menu. And taking the extra attention to prepare every dish perfectly. So we had an amazing dinner at Topolino's. I'm a big breakfast guy, and I have had amazing breakfasts over the years at Kona Cafe.
Yeah.
They've got amazing coffee, and with their egg platter or whatever you call it, they serve this muffin that's shaped like a Mickey Mouse, and you give me that and coffee, and I'm good for the week. I mean, I'll be good. An honorable mention that I threw on my list, Il Molino. I know it is not technically a DVC, but I justified it by saying I could throw a rock. I could throw a rock and hit it from Boardwalk. And so if you are at Boardwalk or Beach Club, walk over to the Swan and try Il Molino. By far, I mean, I know, Pete, you've been raving about it for a while. By far the best Italian on property. And we were there for opening night, actually, after the MLS had vacated the resort. And they were so welcoming to welcome people back. So maybe that that tainted my review a little bit because of how wonderful and welcoming they were. But the food was still outstanding. Their menu really wasn't affected. They've not really taken anything off the menu right now. So we had an absolutely amazing dining experience there. So walk the 10 feet across the bridge and go eat there if you're at Boardwalk or Beach Club or anywhere, really.
I just want to mention, you talked about Kona Cafe, and, with a lot of Disney restaurants, they'll be really, really good, and then they go into that dark night of the soul where they stop being good. And that was the case with Kona for a while. But I've noticed in the last year, they brought in a new chef, made some changes to the menu, really pumped up the quality of the ingredients. And, the last 3 or 4 meals I've had at Kona were absolutely awesome. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It was always sort of the afterthought there with Ohana sort of overshadowing things. And I feel like they were just trying, if someone didn't want to wait for Ohana, they would just start sucking people in. But now it's really developing a name of its own. And people are going out of their way to go to Kona for dinner or for breakfast. So
I think it always had some presence. I think it always had some following. I think it lost some of that, like I said, when it went into that dark night. But I think, really the best thing Kona has going for it are the service issues over at Ohana. That's the best thing it's got going for it, because more and more people are like, you know what? Don't feel like spending all that money to be raced through a meal. So I'll try Kona. So, all right. Fiasco, what about you?
So I have a list of 5. The bottom 2, which still great restaurants, and I love them, obviously, are Flying Fish and California Grill, respectively. And again, food is amazing, but I do feel the need when I go to these restaurants to dress up. The atmosphere, the vibes that it gives, I feel like I should have a button up on, nice pants, and I would, when I go out to dinner, rather be comfortable. I'd rather be wearing shorts, a t-shirt, or maybe just like a Hawaiian button up. And I feel the need to be more dressy at those places. My top 3 restaurants, however, I feel a lot more comfortable in, even though sometimes a Polo is probably more preferred. They are nicer places. But number 3 is JIKO. JIKO could and should be number 1. And if I didn't go back to JIKO as many times as I go back there, I wouldn't know any of the wiser to not have it at number 1. But the fact of the matter is since I went to JIKO for the first time last year, I've been back probably about 15 times. And it's just the inconsistency that I've started to discover over time.
That's the problem.
It's the only reason it's not number 1. If I was just basing it on like my best experiences ever at Walt Disney World, JIKO's number 1. Just the flavors, JIKO's number 1. But the fact is they just keep changing the menu items. Like I come back one time and the African bread service is completely different. I'll come back the next time, the filet is completely different. And I don't know why they keep changing it. Like at the point that JIKO was at around this time last year, let's revert. I mean, we have a limited menu right now, but let's revert it back to that, and everything's perfect.
Well, this has been a problem. Anybody who watched the dining shows knows that for a long time, JIKO and California Grill were neck and neck for me as the best dining on property. But over the last year, that's changed.
Yeah.
JIKO rarely ends up in my favorites list anymore because it is so inconsistent. And it's like, it's another one that's like, the restaurant stopped taking its meds or something.
Yeah.
And it's like manic. It's all over the place. And like you said, the menu keeps changing, like odd. It's like odd how frequently and what they take off and what they put back on. Right. And I don't know what they're trying to prove. You've got to have that group of signature dishes that people come back for over and over and over again. There is nothing worse for Disney foodies than to be anticipating a meal as they're planning their vacation, and they're anticipating that meal for 6 months.
Yeah.
And they get there and the menu changed. and the things you were looking forward to are no longer there. It's really disappointing.
Yep.
And JIKO has a bad habit of doing that right now. Not to mention, it's inconsistent in the kitchen. It's inconsistent in the quality of what comes to the table. And, I feel bad. I feel bad saying it because I used to love JIKO.
Yeah.
But I think JIKO is going into its dark night of the soul,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
And when the last time my family was in town, I had been ranting and raving about JIKO for months and months and months. And when they finally got here, I ended up taking them to all my favorite restaurants. Among them, obviously, was JIKO. And I mean, they reported back to me that was actually their least favorite of the experiences.
You failed your family.
Yeah, but coming in at number 2 for me was actually their favorite meal of the entire trip, and that was the Wave. Now, I've eaten breakfast, lunch, dinner at the Wave. I've had basically like most of the options on the entree menu. I've had a lot of the desserts. I've actually had all the desserts too. I did the breakfast buffet and the actual menu breakfast, and it's always just a slam dunk. If there's one restaurant to slap the label of consistency on, for me, it's the Wave. So hands down, number 2 easily could be my number 1. But right now, my number 1 is something special in that it's Topolino's. My number 1 right now is Topolino's. Now, I really hope that they continue to drive home the consistency that I've been experiencing so far. But so far, I've done breakfast at Topolino's once. I did a special limited time brunch, and I've done dinner 4 times. And
Your wife doesn't cook anything, does she?
No, she actually sometimes she's been cooking more in the new house. She has been cooking more in the new house. But yeah, we love Disney dinners. But Topolino's is just incredible. The service is incredible. The apps, the desserts, the entrees, and it's just fantastic. And I really, really hope that they maintain that consistency and it doesn't fall into something like JIKO. But right now, it is one of my absolute favorite restaurants of all time on Walt Disney World. And please just keep doing what you're doing and don't fall short because it's great.
Yeah. Now I'm hungry. Now I'm hungry. So there you have it, folks. Those are our choices for best dining options, best table service dining options at the DVC resorts. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again next week with another edition of the DVC Show. Have a great week, folks.